Humiliated on the battlefield, stripped naked by Israeli forces, Syrian forces fall silent, and so does their leader. Does behind the silence lie a deal? From Druze calls for secession to Israeli strikes, Syria's fragile future is being redrawn in real time. Israeli forces have arrested, disarmed and stripped several militants affiliated with Syria's ruling Hay'at Tahrir al-Sham. According to Iraq's Al-Ahad TV, the incident took place in Dara'a province in southern Syria near the demarcation line with Israeli territories. The reports said that the militants were disarmed and left without their military uniforms. Surprisingly, Syrian authorities have not issued any public response regarding the incident. The Syrian president Ahmed al-Sharaa has remained silent on the matter. Israeli forces have maintained regular raids across Syria since the fall of Bashar al-Assad's government in December of last year. Following Assad's collapse, Israel expanded its occupation in southwest Syria, seizing additional territory. Hundreds of airstrikes have targeted military infrastructure under HTS's administration, aiming to weaken the group's control in the region. According to a report by Press TV, the reason for Syrian president's silence is linked with Trump's recent announcement promising to lift all the sanctions against the Syrian government. This decision is part of a broader plan in which Syria would normalize ties with Israel, which was seen as something very unlikely under the Assad regime. Under this arrangement, however, al-Sharaa has pledged to recognize Israel, exchange ambassadors, and, reportedly, transfer control of the occupied Golan Heights. In a statement, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the waiver would enable a more effective humanitarian response across Syria.
Sanctions relief is critical for Syria to move forward. The United States is issuing a Caesar Act sanctions waiver to increase investments and cash flows that will facilitate basic services and reconstruction in Syria. We support the Syrian people's efforts to build a more hopeful future.
On the other hand, the Israeli Prime Minister recently stated that talks with Syria were going on but had shown slow progress.
We are holding talks with the Syrians. There is some progress, but there is still a way to go. In any case, these discussions, as well as the contacts with Lebanon, would not have been possible without our decisive victories on the Northern Front and others.
Recent months have also seen direct discussions between HTS and Israeli officials to halt ongoing military operations and establish a security agreement. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has ordered further incursions into Syrian territory to capture strategic locations. Press TV quoting experts reported that Ahmed al-Sharaa's continued silence and willingness to pursue normalization with Israel have emboldened the Israeli occupation to intensify both its ground incursions and airstrikes. The situation highlights the ongoing volatility in southern Syria and the complex geopolitical dynamics involving local forces, Israel, and international stakeholders. Earlier this year, Syrian government forces entered Sweida to reassert control over the Druze enclave, but the move has backfired, Associated Press reports. According to the report, sectarian attacks during the clashes have fueled anti-government sentiment, driven parts of the Druze community closer to Israel, and even sparked calls for secession. Druze groups have since formed a de facto governing and military authority in Sweida, mirroring Kurdish-led structures in the northeast, a major blow to Damascus as it struggles to reassert power 13 years into the civil war. When former President Bashar Assad was ousted by Islamist-led insurgents in December, many Druze welcomed the end of 5 decades of autocratic rule and placed cautious hope in interim leader Ahmed al-Sharaa, a former al-Qaeda-linked militant promising democratic transition. But optimism has since faded. In July, clashes near Sweida left villages in ruins, including that of 21-year-old biology student Omar Alcantar, whose home was burned to the ground. Now he has this to say.
The main idea is that we have to separate from Damascus to prevent another massacre.
While many Druze accepted the new authorities, spiritual leader Sheikh Hikmat al-Hijri opposed them. In July, his followers clashed with Bedouin clans, drawing in government forces who sided with the Bedouins. The fighting left hundreds of Druze civilians dead, many at the hands of government troops. Now, many in Sweida want some form of autonomy in a federal system. A smaller group is calling for total partition. Local Druze figures who still back al-Sharaa are now widely seen as traitors. Sweida's push for autonomy highlights Syria's fragile post-Assad transition. Sectarian violence and mistrust of authorities have strengthened local Druze control, challenging Damascus and raising questions about the future of minority regions in the country.